You know, I talked to her. She said it's not COVID, huh?
Tato Jaya Mudiraya Mudiraya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 6, Creation of the Universal Form, text number 36. Okay, please repeat. Tatapi Kirta Yamanga.
Tatapi Kirta Yamanga.
Tatamati Yata Srutam. Kirtim Hare Swam Satkurtam Giramanya Vidasatim Tapi Kirtayam Yanga Yatamati Yatasrutam Kirtim Hare Swam Satkartum Giramanya Vidasatim Tatapi Kirtayam Yanga Yatamati Yatasrutam Kirtim Hare Swam Satkartum Giramanya Vidasatim Tatapi Kirtayam Yanga Yatamati Yatasutam Kirtim Hare Swam Satkartum Giramanya Vidasatim. Okay, word for word. Tata, therefore, api, although it is so. Kirtayami, I do describe. Anga, Ovidur, Yata, as much as. Mati, intelligent. Yata, as much as. Shrutam, heard. Kirtam, glory. Hare, of the Lord. Swam, own. Satkartam, just purified. Giram, speeches. Anya vida, otherwise. Asatim, unchaste. Translation, please repeat. In spite of my inability, whatever I have been able to hear from the spiritual master, and whatever I could assimilate, I am now describing in glorification of the Lord by pure speech. For otherwise, my power of speaking would remain unchaste. In spite of my inability, whatever I have been able to hear from my spiritual master, and whatever I could assimilate, I am now describing in glorification of the Lord by pure speech. For otherwise, my power of speaking would remain unchaste. The divine purport of His divine grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. The purification of the conditioned soul necessitates purification of his consciousness. By the presence of consciousness, the presence of the transcendental soul is verified. And as soon as consciousness leaves the body, the material body is not active. Consciousness is perceived, therefore, by activities. The theory put forward by empiric philosophers that consciousness can remain in an inactive state is the proof of their profound of knowledge. One should not become unchaste by stopping the activities of pure consciousness. If the activities of pure consciousness are stopped, certainly the conscious living force will be otherwise engaged, because unless engaged, the consciousness has no standing. Consciousness cannot be silent, even for a moment, When the body does not act, the consciousness acts in the form of dreams. Unconsciousness is artificial. By induced extraneous help, it remains for a limited period. But when the intoxication of the drug is finished, or when one is awake, the consciousness again acts earnestly. Maitreya's statement is that in order to avoid unchaste conscious activities, he was trying to describe the unlimited glories of the Lord, although he did not have the ability to describe them perfectly. The glorification of the Lord is not a product of research, but the result of hearing submissively from the authority of the spiritual master. It is also not possible to repeat all that one has heard from his spiritual master, but one can narrate as far as possible by one's honest endeavor. It does not matter whether the Lord's glories are fully explained or not. One must attempt to engage one's body, mental, and verbal activity in the transcendental glorification of the Lord. Otherwise, such activities will remain unchaste and impure. The existence of the conditioned soul can be purified only by the method of engaging mind and speech in the service of the Lord. The Tridandi Sannyasi of the Vaishnava school accepts 3 rhymes, representing the vow to engage in the service of the Lord with body, mind, and speech. Whereas the Ekadandi Sannyasi takes the vow to become one with the Supreme. Since the Lord is the Absolute, there is no distinction between him and his glory. The glories of the Lord are chanted. The glories of the Lord is chanted by the Vaishnava Sannyasi, or as substantial as the Lord himself. And thus, while glorifying the Lord, the devotee becomes one with him in transcendental interest, although he remains eternally a transcendental servitor. This simultaneous one and different position of the devotee makes him eternally purified, and thus his life becomes a complete success. I'll repeat that last little part there. The glories of the Lord is chanted by the Vaishnava Sannyasi, or as substantial as the Lord himself. And thus, while glorifying the Lord, the devotee becomes one with him in transcendental interest, although he remains eternally a transcendental servitor. This simultaneously one and different position of the devotee makes him eternally purified, and thus his life becomes a complete success. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport to the 36th sloka of the 3rd canto, Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. I offer my humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of His divine grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada, who is opening my eyes with the torch of transcendental knowledge. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. It's a wonderful verse here to understand our position. Here we have the great sage Maitreya, a greatly renowned renunciate with a greatly extended lifespan, who has seen and understood by experience so many things within the universe. Yet we hear this humble sentence, him declaring, in spite of my inability. He's not thinking of himself in an arrogant way, but in a humble way. He's saying, in spite of my inability, whatever I have been able to hear, Srila Prabhupada puts in parentheses, from my spiritual master, because he's not listening to mundane TV or radio or broadband, but he's listening to the transcendental band of Krishna consciousness as taught in the Vedas by Lord Brahma himself and his various sons, including the exalted Narada Muni. And he goes on and says, whatever I could assimilate, again, humble, not arrogant, as though he could assimilate everything. He says, and whatever I could assimilate, I am now describing. And he's not describing it in glorification of himself or any other conditioned soul, but he's describing it in glorification of the Lord by pure speech. For otherwise, he declares, my power of speaking would remain unchaste. And this is the point Srila Prabhupada makes in the purport, that if our consciousness is not engaged in devotional service, hearing and chanting, glorifying the Supreme Personality of Godhead, remembering Him, offering Him puja or worship, offering Him service, surrendering to Him, and being friendly toward Him, not antagonistic or doubtful or even mean because he hasn't done what we want him to do. If we're not engaged in his devotional service, then we will be engaged, but we'll be engaged under Mahamaya, under the Lord's powerful external energy. His Jeev Tattva, or a very minute, infinitesimal expansion of the Absolute Truth. We are always engaged either by the Lord's pure spiritual energy, Yogamaya, or by his inferior external energy, Mahamaya. So as soon as we deviate from devotional service, then Mahamaya takes over. And soon there's lust, anger, and greed. Very soon there'll be some pride and conceit and arrogance, which will lead to ignorance of ourselves and a display of harsh anger. Because that is the nature of the external energy. And without being under the shelter of the Lord's internal potency, his spiritual energy, then we come under the shelter of his external energy. We're going to serve him one way or another, either in truth, under the direction of his spiritual energy as his devotee, or in illusion, under the pretext that we're separate from the Lord, or that the Lord is our order carrier, or that I am the Lord. And that's the point that Srila Prabhupada is also making in this purport in a really ingenious way as he describes the difference between the three-dandi sannyasi of the Vaishnava school and the ekadandi sannyasi of the Mayavad school. As soon as one's speech is not in glorification of the Lord, then it becomes unchaste. And like the Mayavads, they explain the soul, but they explain the soul as the super soul ultimately. And that's their terrible mistake. In fact, they even go on to get rid of the super soul and get rid of all of Krishna's incarnations and Krishna himself by declaring them a form of Maya and thinking that somehow or ever the absolute truth is only the impersonal Brahman, and everything is ultimately only one with that impersonal Brahman. They forget the other side of life, devotional service, that even Seshanaga and Advaita Acharya are fully engaged in. As Vishnu Tattvas themselves, they're fully engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan Sri Krishna. So as soon as the living entity forgets the difference between him and the Lord, and thinks of himself as the same as the Lord, then everything becomes unchaste, and he's trapped by the last of the most powerful snare, trap of the Lord's illusory energy, where he walks around thinking himself liberated, and the role of a sannyasi even, renounced from all sorts of material activity, and a great reciter of the Vedas, with wonderful sound of speech, but the meaning of the speech itself is completely illusory and false, and its influence can lead to the downfall of ever-living entities. So such a leader is actually a misleader, and they're doing the greatest harm to human society, because they're completely misleading human society into thinking there's something they're not. So we have to be very careful in connection to Mayavadi sannyasis, because their words can entrap us in the most powerful of Maya's weapons, making us think ourselves none different from the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Whereas in reality, our difference from him makes us always pure. Because the Mayavadi sannyasi, he can't be pure. His intelligence is impure. His body may be very pure due to his austerities, and his mind may be very controlled due to his austerities. But his intelligence is polluted with a bogus conception of the absolute truth, and an offensive conception of the absolute truth, where he is completely assassinated, gotten rid of Krishna, and he himself has assumed the role of being the personification of the absolute truth. So, but the devotee, because we always remember that we're different from the Lord, we're separate, and our role is that we are eternally his servant. Otherwise, why would we be on the altar offering him puja or glorification in the form of worship, whereby we offer him incense, we offer him lamps, we offer him water, pure water, we offer him nice cloth, we offer him nice flowers, we fan him, we whisk him, we cook for him, we dress him, we bathe him. Why would we do all those things if we wasn't his servitor? If we thought we were equal to him, we would stop doing that. That would only be done, as the Mayavadis teach, for the neophytes to learn how to control their mind and to fix it, the beginning of fixing it upon transcendence. They distort the whole process of worship. They worship ultimately to become one with the Lord on the altar. But the devotee never thinks like that. We are always the Lord's servant. And we also glorify the great servants of the Lord, like Hanuman or Maharaj Ambarish and so many others. Here we have Maitreya, who's one of them, who became the spiritual master of the great devotee Vidura. You know, he himself, hearing from the Lord when the Lord was about to leave this world and was teaching Uddhava. So Maitreya is a great sage who has a big presence in the story of the Lord, the Srimad Bhagavatam. And this Maitreya, he, by his example and by his words, he's teaching us to be a humble devotee and to take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master. It's only by taking shelter of a bona fide spiritual master that one can hear the absolute truth. Otherwise, we can go to so many schools. We can even go to a divinity school. And, and God knows our speculation on the absolute truth will continue for the rest of our life. And God knows if we'll ever have any divine revelation whereby Krishna reveals himself just because of our theological speculations about the truth, whereby we always are trying to understand various shastras, but without ever submitting to the devotees of the Lord. That doesn't mean that a theologian won't submit to a devotee of the Lord, but if one doesn't, then what good is all this education? What good is it if I never become the Lord's devotee, that I always remain in a sort of puffed up, arrogant position of being a teacher of the absolute truth without myself having received the mercy of the absolute truth? One may be a humble Brahmin who is searching after the absolute truth, but is honest, as Srila Prabhupada says, he is honest to repeat what one has heard. So in the humble position, we search out a devotee of the Lord that we can hear the glory of the Lord from. And we surrender to listening to that glory. And then we do our best to repeat it as much as we assimilate in an honest way without adding things to it through our, as Srila Prabhupada would say, through the potency of our brain. Because we speculate this and that and we add it to the things the devotees are saying. So that's not an honest presentation. Our presentation has to be parampara, or according to the line of disciplic succession, according to what has been taught by the spiritual master and the previous acharyas. Therefore, in our line of disciplic succession, we're always repeating the absolute truth according to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his foremost disciples, the Goswamis of Vrindavan, and other great contemporaries of them, on down through the line of disciplic succession to Prabhupada's spiritual master, to Prabhupada himself. And Srila Prabhupada's disciples who are further expounding upon the absolute truth, repeating within the line of disciplic succession, not outside the line of disciplic succession. That becomes our disqualification. So when we listen to the devotees, then we can get Lord Chaitanya's mercy. That mercy comes in the form of revelation, whereby Krishna reveals himself to the devotee. Oh, look here, I am the super soul. I am in everyone's heart. From me comes knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. People aren't doing this on their own. It's all by God's mercy that life is going on. And Krishna reveals everything. He reveals that, yes, I do enjoy these pastimes with my devotees. All the time. They never come to an end. I don't only do it in Vaikuntha and in Goloka Vrindavan, but I do it throughout all the material universes. I am constantly appearing in some universe, performing pastimes. And in every universe, I'm incarnating so many times. So many times Krishna incarnates. The incarnations coming through his Kashirodakshayi Vishnu form. his form of lying on the ocean of milk in the universe, whereby he takes an incarnation to correct the irreligion that goes on within the universe, to correct the deviation of the inhabitants of the universe, but to save the pious and the devotees from those who are acting demoniac. You know, Krishna takes various incarnations. Sometimes it's described that they're as innumerable as the waves on the ocean. So Krishna is giving us a life of Krishna consciousness, a life of devotional service. But if we deviate it from it, there's the tremendous, powerful force of the external energy that will give us a life. And you know, soon we'll be a football player, or soon we'll be have some occupation that will be completely for my self-interest. It won't be for serving Krishna. It'll be for my interest. Put money in my bank account to spend as I want, and to please those people that I work for, or just pleasing myself because I enjoy doing this. And I also enjoy the result. Now, even if I don't care about the result, you know, I'm acting only on my behalf. You know, without the authority of the spiritual master, without the authority of the Supreme Lord. You know, I have my independence, which we certainly do have our minute independence, and we can do that. But the problem with that type of life is that there's always the possibility of slipping down. You know, as great as we may be, we're not the greatest. Even if we think like that, we're not the greatest. And so there's always the possibility of slipping up. I may even be a very great person like Indra in the universe, but I may slip up. And if we study history, we see that there have been many Indras that have slipped up. There's even been Brahmas that have slipped up, with the speak of us ordinary people. We should know without a doubt that we always slip up because we have experience of it. And we can see others slipping up. We don't want to become just absorbed in the slipping up, but we want to become absorbed in Krishna consciousness. As painful as it may be for us ignorant souls, as Krishna says in the Gita, it's very difficult for those in the mode of ignorance because we have no taste. It seems like poison to glorify, you know, someone other than ourselves or our friends. You know, why we have to always glorify God. And people have so many doubts about God anyway in the world. They have lots of doubts. And it's very hard to prove it to them because they don't want to accept Shastras. They only want to accept some logic, and ultimately that logic has to be able to force Krishna to reveal himself if he's a person, or they want some sort of Mayavadi experience of becoming one with God. It's a very difficult world to preach Krishna consciousness in. But that was Srila Prabhupada's mission, to preach Krishna consciousness in this world, and to redeem the conditioned souls, to free the conditioned souls from all those voidist philosophies and tendencies within our heart, and all those impersonal conceptions of the truth. To free us from this Maya, or illusion. And Srila Prabhupada gave his blood, sweat, and tears to do that. So therefore it is so important to read Bhaktivedanta purports, because they're always tearing into those misconceptions and purifying our heart from them. If we don't hear from A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami's purports, it's very difficult to get completely cleansed of these conceptions, because those conceptions aren't only from this lifetime, but many lifetimes. And they're very difficult to cleanse. Prabhupada used to say it was like cleansing coal. You know, you can rub cold and rub cold, but it never gets clean, so to speak, because it's dark, or it consists of the lower modes by nature. But if you can press it hard enough with the absolute truth, then it becomes like a diamond. So that's why it's important to hear from Srila Prabhupada, because he's the Shakyavesa Avatar. He's the founder Acharya of Lord Chaitanya's movement of spreading Krishna consciousness throughout the world. The founder, the Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Not just a Hindu society in India, or even a Gaudiya Mat society only in India. But Prabhupada took it to all the conditioned souls around the world and explained Krishna consciousness in a way to free them from Maya and turn us into devotees. Otherwise, what was our hope? Because, we were not born in devotee families. We were either born in some other type of religious family, or in a family of those who are not religious. So, Srila Prabhupada's purports are most important for us conditioned souls to hear, to elevate us and bring us to the stage of pure devotional service. So, that's the time that we have. Are there any comments or questions before?
Well, I was just wondering about Maitreya Rishi. He is talked about so much in the Bhagavatam, and I don't know really anything about Maitreya, like where did he come from, or what's his position?
Well, there's a lot of information in other Puranas, and I don't remember it. But he certainly took his birth probably from one of the great sons of Brahma. He's a renunciate. I don't know if he was ever a grahastha. He was very powerful and very powerful Brahmana renunciate. And by his good fortune, he heard Lord Krishna himself instructing Uddhava. And that way he became most fortunate. And Uddhava himself sent the incarnation of Yamaraj, Vidura, the great uncle of the Pandavas, Krishna's great devotees, sent him to understand Krishna consciousness perfectly from Maitreya. But who Maitreya was, before this, I don't remember. I heard different stories from the Puranas sometime in the past, but you hear so many things, and to remember them is another thing.
So it's basically just that he heard Krishna speaking to Uddhava, and so now he's just repeating.
Yeah, but he was highly qualified. He was existing on the Brahman platform. He was the absolute truth is divided into three: Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So he was perfectly realized in Brahman and Paramatma. And, he wasn't an ordinary person. He certainly had a conception of Bhagavan. But upon seeing Bhagavan himself speaking to his great devotee Uddhava, that was, further, clarified everything so perfectly that, that became like, what would you say, the opposite would be the straw that broke the camel's back. And so what is the opposite of the straw that broke the camel's back? It would be the icing on the cake. Yeah. So that was like the icing on the cake of his spiritual life, But he wasn't an unqualified fool like myself, who, just came, and was just a really ignorant soul in the world, and just somehow fell into Krishna consciousness.
Yeah, no, you knew he was a
And had to suffer through many, many years and still suffering, just trying to become Krishna conscious. He was a great person in the universe, a great spiritualist. Anything else? Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Let's see if we can turn off Lakshmi's camera. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I guess we could always, we know how to do it.